Katie Morrison wiped the rain from her helmet visor for the third time that hour. The toxic water ran down in thick streams, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. She had been working on Epsilon 7 for 6 months now, and she still wasn't used to the constant rain. The mining colony sat on a moon where it rained every single day. Not normal rain either. This rain could eat through metal if you left it exposed too long. She walked along the drainage system near the eastern edge of the colony. It was her job to make sure the water kept flowing away from the main buildings. If the drains got blocked, the whole place could flood in hours. It wasn't exciting work, but someone had to do it. Katie didn't mind. She liked being alone out here, away from the crowded colony buildings where 200 miners lived on top of each other. The sound of rushing water filled her ears. The drains were working hard today. Then she heard something else. A sound that didn't belong. It was high and sharp, almost like singing. Katie stopped walking and turned her head, trying to figure out where it was coming from. There, to her left, past a cluster of rocks. She climbed over the rocks carefully. Her environmental suit was tough, but one wrong step and she could tear it. That would be bad, very bad. The rain would burn through her clothes and skin in seconds. Katie moved slowly, following the strange sound. It got louder as she walked. More desperate, then she saw the pool. The rain had filled a low spot in the ground, creating a deep pond of toxic water, and in the middle of that pond something was struggling, something alive. Katie ran to the edge and stared. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. A small creature floated in the water, its tiny wings beating against the surface. It looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, but smaller, much smaller. About the size of a cat, its scales were beautiful, shifting colors from deep purple to dark blue. They seemed to glow even in the dim light. The creature's head went under the water. It came back up, coughing and crying out in that high singing voice. Its golden eyes locked onto Katie. There was something in those eyes. Intelligence. Understanding. Fear. Katie didn't think. She just moved. She waded into the toxic pool, her suit's alarms screaming at her. Red lights flashed inside her helmet. A robotic voice warned her about the chemical levels. She ignored all of it. The creature was drowning. That was all that mattered. The water came up to her waist. It was thick and heavy, not like normal water at all. Katie pushed forward, fighting against the weight. The creature stopped struggling when it saw her coming. It just watched her with those huge golden eyes. Waiting, Katie reached it and scooped it up in her arms. The creature was surprisingly light. It curled against her chest immediately, wrapping its tail around her arm. It was shaking. Katie could feel it trembling through her suit. She turned and walked back to the edge as fast as she could. The alarms were still screaming. Her suit was taking damage from the toxic water. When she reached solid ground, Katie ran. She ran all the way back to the colony, holding the creature tight against her chest. Other workers stared as she passed, but she didn't stop to explain. She went straight to her quarters, a small room with a bed, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. It wasn't much, but it was private. Katie sealed the door and carefully removed her helmet. Then she looked down at what she had saved. The creature looked back up at her. Up close, it was even more amazing. Its scales were like tiny mirrors, reflecting light in ways that shouldn't be possible. Its wings were translucent, like stained glass. And those eyes. They looked at her with an intelligence that made her shiver. She grabbed a towel and carefully dried the creature. It let her, staying perfectly still. When she was done, it made a small chirping sound. Almost like it was saying, "Thank you." Katie smiled. "You're welcome," she said softly. "Let's see if we can figure out what you are." She pulled out her medical scanner, a device that could analyze any known life form in the database. Katie ran it over the creature. The scanner beeped. Then it beeped again. Then it started making a high-pitched whine. The screen filled with numbers and symbols, scrolling so fast Katie couldn't read them. Finally, the scanner just shut down, overloaded. Katie stared at the dead device in her hand. In 6 years of using medical scanners, she had never seen one crash like that. Whatever this creature was, it was far beyond anything in the human database. The genetic complexity must be enormous. The creature chirped again and wrapped its tail tighter around her wrist. It didn't seem to want to let go. Katie sat down on her bed, and the creature climbed into her lap. It curled up there looking perfectly content, like it belonged. I guess you're staying with me, Katie said. She thought for a moment. You need a name. How about Ember? You kind of glow like a coal. The creature's eyes brightened and it made a happy sound. Katie decided to take that as approval. She spent the next hour trying to figure out what Ember ate. She offered bits of her dinner. Ember sniffed each piece carefully, then ate some of the protein bar and ignored everything else. At least he ate something. Katie was worried about that. She had no idea how to care for an alien creature. That night, Ember curled up on Katie's pillow right next to her head. She could hear him breathing, a soft sound like wind through leaves. Katie stared at the ceiling, thinking about what had happened. She had saved a life today, a unique, impossible life, something that probably shouldn't exist according to everything humans knew about biology. Katie had no idea that she had just saved the last heir to an empire that once ruled a third of the galaxy. She didn't know that the small creature sleeping beside her was royalty. She didn't know that 300 alien species would soon learn her name. She didn't know that powerful beings would travel across the stars to find her. All Katie knew was that she had found something drowning, and she had pulled it out. That was enough. That was everything. As she drifted off to sleep, Ember's tail still wrapped around her wrist, Katie felt peaceful. She had done something good today. Something right. The universe would never be the same. But Katie Morrison, engineer on a remote mining colony, had no way of knowing that yet. She just slept, one hand resting on the small dragon that had already decided she was the most important being in all the stars. 3 weeks passed quickly. Ember grew fast. He was now the size of a large dog, though still light enough that Katie could carry him when needed. He followed her everywhere. When she went to work, he stayed in her quarters, but she could feel him waiting. It was strange. Katie couldn't explain it, but she always knew where Ember was. She could sense his emotions too, when he was happy or scared or hungry. The other workers had noticed Ember by now. Some were curious. Others were worried. Commander Jake Patterson, who ran the military side of the colony, had come to her quarters twice to ask questions. Where did the creature come from? Was it dangerous? Should they contact Earth Command? Katie had told him the truth. She found Ember drowning and saved him. She didn't know what he was. And no, he wasn't dangerous. Jake wasn't completely satisfied with those answers, but he didn't push harder. Not yet. On day 22, everything changed. Katie was running diagnostics on the eastern drainage system when the alarms went off. Not the rain alarms. The big alarms. The ones that meant something serious was happening. Katie ran back toward the colony, her heart pounding. Ember was in her quarters. She could feel his fear even from this distance. When she reached the main compound, she saw people gathered outside, pointing at the sky. Katie looked up and felt her breath catch. There was a ship in orbit. Not a human ship. This was something else entirely. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built, and it was alive. That was the only word for it. The ship had scales like Ember. It moved like a living thing, breathing and shifting in the darkness of space. Jake was shouting orders. People were running to defensive positions. Katie pushed through the crowd until she found him. "What's happening?" she asked. Jake's face was pale. "That thing just appeared. No warning. It bypassed every sensor we have. It's like it just materialized in orbit." He looked at Katie. "I don't suppose your little friend knows anything about this." Katie felt Ember's emotions surge through their connection. Not fear anymore, recognition, hope. "I need to get to my quarters," she said. "Not a chance," Jake replied. "We're on lockdown until we know what that thing wants." They didn't have to wait long. Something detached from the ship, a small craft diving toward the colony. It moved impossibly fast, then slowed at the last second, landing gently in the center of the compound. The craft's door opened, and a figure stepped out. Katie had thought Ember was beautiful. This being was magnificent. It stood 12 feet tall, covered in the same shimmering scales. Its wings were folded against its back, each one large enough to cover a truck. Its eyes glowed with a deep purple light. The creature radiated power. The air itself seemed to crackle around it. The being spoke, and Katie heard its voice inside her head. Everyone did. The entire colony heard it at once. "I am Elder Vrex of the Draconis. I have come for the heir." Jake stepped forward, his hand on his weapon. "You need to explain what you're doing here. This is human territory." Vrex's eyes fixed on Jake, and the commander took an involuntary step back. "Human territory. Vrex repeated. How quaint. This moon has no strategic value to anyone, but it contains something precious beyond measure. Something that was stolen from us and left here to die. Katie's quarters door burst open. Ember flew out, moving faster than Katie had ever seen him. He landed beside her and immediately positioned himself between Katie and Vrex. The small dragon's scales began to glow, and he made a sound that was half roar, half song. Vrex stared at Ember. Then the elder dragon did something unexpected. He bowed his head. Prince Ashkor, Vrex said. We thought you lost forever. Katie felt dizzy. Prince, Ember was royalty? She looked down at the creature who had been sleeping in her bed and eating her protein bars. He seemed different now. Older somehow. More aware. Vrex lifted his head and looked at Katie for the first time. You are the one who saved him. It wasn't a question. We tracked his genetic signature to this location. The enemies who took him left him in your toxic waters, believing we could never sense him through the chemical interference. They wanted him to die alone and forgotten. Who would do that? Katie asked. Her voice shook, but she met Vrex's eyes. Those who fear the return of the Draconis Imperium, Vrex said. We were the rulers of this galaxy once. 10,000 years ago, we controlled a third of all known space. But we fell. War and disease destroyed our empire. Now we are few, and Prince Ashkor is the last of the royal bloodline. Without him, our species will not survive. Jake moved closer to Katie. And you want to take him? The heir must return, Vrex said. He must complete the ascension ceremony. Without it, our people fade into extinction. 300 species will fall into war without the treaty systems we maintain. Katie felt Ember press against her leg. Through their connection, she felt his emotions clearly now. Confusion, sadness, and something else. A deep, powerful attachment to her. What if he doesn't want to go? She asked quietly. The compound went silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. Vrex stared at Katie like she had just said something impossible. Want? He is Prince Ashkor. His desires are secondary to his duty. He's also a child, Katie said. She put her hand on Ember's head. He's scared. He doesn't remember you or your empire. All he knows is that I pulled him from the water when he was drowning. All he knows is that I've kept him safe. Ember made a sound then, a clear, ringing note that made every piece of equipment in the colony vibrate at the same frequency. Katie felt something surge through their connection. Words. Not spoken, but understood. Stay safe, Mother. Vrex's eyes went wide. His wings spread slightly in involuntary reaction. Impossible, he breathed. He has imprinted on you. On a human. What does that mean? Katie asked. Vrex folded his wings slowly, his expression shifting from shock to something that might have been respect. Dragon young imprint on their primary caregiver. It is a survival mechanism from ancient times. The bond is absolute. It cannot be broken. It means Prince Ashkor has chosen you as his parent guardian. Jake let out a low whistle. So what you're saying is that Katie here is now the mom of alien royalty. It is more complex than that, Vrex said. By our oldest laws, the one who saves and raises the heir has the right to speak for him until he reaches maturity. It is a law from before our empire, from when we were simple creatures struggling to survive. Katie felt the weight of what Vrex was saying settle on her shoulders. I can speak for him? You can guide him. Advise him. Make decisions for him until he is grown. Vrex's eyes bore into Katie. You have just become one of the most powerful individuals in the galaxy, Katie Morrison. And I do not believe you understand what that means. Katie looked down at Ember. He looked back up at her with those golden eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her from toxic water 3 weeks ago. Helpless, trusting. She had made a choice then to save him. Now she had to make another choice. If I'm his guardian, Katie said slowly, then I need to understand what's happening. I need to know about the Draconis, about the Imperium, about what it means that he's the last heir. She met Vrex's gaze. And then I need to decide what's best for Ember. Not for your species. Not for the galaxy. For him. Vrex was quiet for a long moment. Then he bowed his head again, this time to Katie. Then you understand the responsibility better than I hoped. Very well, Katie Morrison. I will teach you our history, our laws, our customs, and when you have learned, you will make your choice. He spread his wings. But know this. Time is not our ally. The ascension ceremony must be completed before Prince Ashkor reaches his 5th year of growth. That gives you less than 5 of your Earth years to decide, and the galaxy will not wait patiently for your answer. Rex returned to his craft and lifted off, returning to the massive ship in orbit. But Katie knew he wouldn't leave. He would wait. The whole galaxy would wait, for a mining engineer who had just wanted to save a drowning creature and had somehow become the guardian of an alien prince. Jake put a hand on her shoulder. You know this changes everything, right?
Katie nodded.
Ember chirped and wrapped his tail around her wrist just like he had that first day. Yeah, she said quietly. I know. Katie had never seen anything like Apex Prime. The space station floated at the exact center of explored space. A massive construct that looked like a city and a ship had somehow merged together. Thousands of vessels from hundreds of worlds docked there every day. It was neutral ground. The one place in the galaxy where every species had equal standing. She stood in a waiting room with windows that showed the endless expanse of space. Ember perched on her shoulder now, comfortable there after months of practice. He was bigger than he had been, about the size of a large eagle, but he could make himself surprisingly light when he wanted to. Elder Vreck stood nearby, his massive form somehow fitting in a room built for smaller beings. The last few months had been intense. Vrex had taught Katie about the Draconus, about their history of conquest and their terrible fall, about the laws that governed their society, about the treaty systems they maintained even in exile. Katie had learned that the galaxy was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds, all connected by ancient agreements and modern politics. And now they were here, at the Galactic Council. Because Katie had invoked an ancient right, she had demanded that the Draconis be given back their sanctuary world. The world the Council had taken 300 years ago when they decided the Draconis were too dangerous to hold territory. The door opened. An official gestured for them to enter.
Katie took a deep breath and walked into the council chamber.
It was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. Seats arranged in a circle rose up like a stadium, each section holding the representatives of a different species. Katie saw beings made of crystal and beings made of light. She saw massive creatures that looked like beetles and graceful beings that seemed to float without touching the ground. Hundreds of eyes turned to watch her as she walked to the center of the chamber. A voice boomed from everywhere at once. The council recognizes Katie Morrison, guardian of the Draconus heir, and her petition to restore Draconus territorial rights. Katie stood in the center, feeling very small. Ember shifted on her shoulder and made a soft sound. Through their bond, she felt his support, his confidence in her. It helped. A crystalline being rose from one of the upper seats. Its body pulsed with sharp light as it spoke. I am Ambassador Seketh of the Zephrani Coalition. This petition is absurd. A human who has been in space for less than 2 centuries claims the right to speak for one of the oldest species in the galaxy? This is without precedent. Katie felt anger spike through her, but she kept her voice calm. I don't claim anything. I pulled a drowning child from toxic water. He chose to stay with me. That's all? That's all? Seketh's light pulsed brighter. You have disrupted 10,000 years of galactic law. The Draconus ruled with fire and terror. Their return threatens everything we have built. Another representative stood. This one looked human at first, but her skin had a faint golden shimmer. I am Commander Lisa Grant representing Earth. The Draconus Imperium fell millennia ago. Their survivors have lived peacefully in exile. Are you saying they should be denied the right to exist because you fear what they once were? We do not fear, rumbled a massive beetle-like creature from another section. We remember. The Draconis burned 20 worlds in the expansion wars. They enslaved entire species. They destroyed civilizations that refused to submit. Katie felt Ember tense on her shoulder. Vreck stepped forward, his mental voice filling the chamber. I do not deny the crimes of our ancestors. The old Imperium was built on conquest and cruelty. But that empire fell. We have spent 10,000 years trying to be better. We have shared our knowledge freely. We have helped other species overcome disease and disaster. We have asked for nothing in return except the right to survive. The beetle creature, Ambassador Thornick, shifted his massive body. And yet you ask us to give you a world. Territory means power. Power corrupts. How can we trust that you will not become what you once were? Vrex was silent for a moment. Then he said something Katie didn't expect. You cannot. Trust must be earned. But without a sanctuary world, we cannot perform the ascension ceremony. Without that ceremony, Prince Ashkor cannot mature properly. And without him, our species dies. We will be extinct in 1 generation. The chamber fell silent. Katie felt the weight of that statement settle over everyone present. Ember made a small, sad sound. He understood more than people thought. Katie looked around the chamber. At all these powerful beings from all these different worlds, they were afraid. She could see it now. They weren't just worried about the Draconis becoming dangerous again. They were worried about change, about something upsetting the careful balance they had maintained for centuries. What do you need? Katie heard herself ask. She wasn't talking to the council. She was talking to Vrex. The elder dragon turned to her. A sanctuary world. A place where we can live without fear, where Prince Ashkor can undergo the rite of ascension, where our people can raise families again. We do not need an empire. We need a home. Katie turned to face the council. Her heart was pounding, but she forced herself to speak clearly. Then give it back. Seketh's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been laughter. And why should we listen to you, human? What authority do you have to demand anything? Katie felt something happen then. Ember's presence in her mind grew stronger. He was sharing something with her. Knowledge, understanding, the ancient laws of the Draconis. She suddenly knew things she hadn't known a moment before. Her voice changed, taking on harmonics that shouldn't have been possible from a human throat. I am the guardian of the air, Katie said. By Draconis law that makes me regent until he reaches maturity. And by the Treaty of Stars, signed 10,000 years ago by every species in this chamber, the Draconis Imperium has the right to maintain one sanctuary world. You have violated that treaty for 300 years. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted from every direction. Some in languages Katie couldn't identify. The noise was overwhelming. Katie stood her ground, one hand on Ember's neck. The small dragon spread his wings and began to glow with an inner light. I invoke the Treaty of Broken Stars, Katie said loudly. I call for a tribunal to judge this matter. The chamber went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Seketh spoke, and for the first time, the ambassador's voice was uncertain. You cannot. That treaty has not been invoked in over 4,000 years. The elder judges are in stasis. It would take months to wake them. Then wake them, Katie said, because I'm not backing down. The Draconis deserve their sanctuary world, and if this council won't give it to them, then I'll take this to the highest authority in the galaxy. Commander Grant stood again. She looked at Katie with something that might have been respect or might have been concern. Do you understand what you're asking for? A tribunal of stars is not a simple legal proceeding. The elder judges predate most of our civilizations. They answer to no one. Their judgment is final and absolute. Katie looked at Ember. He looked back at her with those golden eyes. Through their bond, she felt his trust, his belief in her. She thought about the day she pulled him from toxic water, about the choice she had made then to save a life without thinking about the consequences. She was making another choice now. A bigger one. But it felt the same. Sometimes you just had to do what was right even when it was scary, even when you didn't know what would happen next. I understand, Katie said. Wake the judges. Let them decide. Seketh's light pulsed rapidly. You are making a mistake, human. The elder judges do not simply rule on law. They judge character. They judge worth. They will examine the Draconis and decide if they deserve to survive as a species. Can you live with that responsibility? Katie felt Ember shift on her shoulder. His tail wrapped around her wrist like it always did when he was scared or uncertain. She put her other hand over his tail, holding him steady. Yes, she said quietly. I can live with it. The council chamber dissolved into chaos again, but Katie barely heard it. She was thinking about what came next, about the ancient beings that would soon wake and judge everything, about whether she had just saved the Draconis or doomed them. Vrex approached her as the council session ended. That was either very brave or very foolish, he said. Maybe both, Katie admitted. She felt exhausted. The harmonics in her voice had faded, and she was just Katie Morrison again. Just an engineer who had saved a drowning creature and somehow ended up at the center of galactic politics. The elder judges will not be easy on us, Vrex warned. They will see our history. All of it, the good and the terrible. They will judge whether we deserve a second chance. Katie looked at Ember, who chirped softly and nuzzled her cheek. Then we'll just have to show them that some things are worth saving, she said. No matter how much they've messed up in the past. Vrex bowed his head. I hope you are right, Katie Morrison. For all our sakes. As they left the council chamber, Katie felt the eyes of hundreds of beings watching her. some with hope, some with fear, some with anger. She had just changed everything. For better or worse, the galaxy would never be the same. And it all started because she couldn't walk past something that needed help. Katie wondered if she would have made the same choice if she had. The ring world was old, older than any civilization Katie had learned about. It circled a dying star, a massive band of constructed land that stretched impossibly far in both directions. Elder Vrex had told her it was built by a species that vanished 1,000,000 years ago. No one knew their name. No one knew why they disappeared. But their ring world remained, a monument to their impossible engineering. The tribunal chamber sat at the ring world's highest point. It was carved from a single piece of crystal that reached up into the thin atmosphere. Katie stood in the center of that crystal room, her boots making soft sounds on the smooth floor. Ember was beside her now, grown to the size of a horse. He still stayed close to her, still sought her touch when he was uncertain. 3 beings waited for them. Katie had been told about the elder judges, but nothing could have prepared her for seeing them in person. The first was pure energy, a being of light that hurt to look at directly. It called itself Luminex and claimed to have watched stars being born. The second was a massive stone creature that moved so slowly it seemed frozen. Minutes passed between each of its words. It was called Grandfather Rock. The third being existed in more than 3 dimensions. Looking at it made Katie's head hurt. Vrex had told her not to stare at it directly. It was known only as the Witness. The tribunal had taken 3 months to arrange. 3 months of waiting while the galaxy watched and argued. Katie had spent that time learning everything she could about Draconis history. Vrex had shown her records, images, stories. She had seen the glory of the old Imperium and the horror of its wars. She had watched recordings of Draconis warriors burning worlds. She had also seen the exile, the suffering, the slow, painful change as the survivors tried to become something better. Now the moment had arrived. The judgment would begin. Katie's hands shook slightly. She clasped them together to hide it. Ember pressed against her side, and she felt his support through their bond. He was scared too, but he trusted her. That helped. Luminex spoke first. Its voice was like solar wind, powerful and ancient. We have reviewed the petition. Katie Morrison, human guardian of Prince Ashkor, heir to the Draconis Imperium, you invoke the Treaty of Broken Stars and demand the return of sanctuary rights to the Draconis species. Is this correct? Yes, Katie said. Her voice sounded small in the massive chamber. Then let us begin with the accusations, Luminex said. Let those who oppose this petition speak. A holographic display filled the air. Ambassador Seketh appeared along with dozens of other council representatives. They began to speak one after another. They presented evidence, records, data, images that made Katie feel sick. She watched the Draconis burn a world called Turthan 5. The planet's atmosphere caught fire. Billions died in hours. She watched Draconis soldiers enslave the population of the Kelthera system. Families torn apart, children taken from parents. She watched the bombardment of Nexus Prime, where the Draconis destroyed an entire civilization because they refused to submit. The images went on and on. Hours of them. Katie watched it all, forcing herself not to look away. Ember trembled beside her. Through their bond, she felt his shame and horror. He was seeing the truth of his species for the first time. The truth of what his ancestors had done. Finally, the accusations ended. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the crystal walls. Katie felt hollowed out. How could she defend this? How could she ask for mercy for a species that had committed such terrible crimes? Then Vrex stepped forward. The elder dragon looked old and tired. His scales had lost some of their shine, but his voice was steady. I do not deny what you have shown. Every image is true. Every accusation valid. The Imperium of old was built on suffering and death. We took what we wanted and destroyed anyone who opposed us. Vrex paused. But I asked the tribunal to see what came after, to see what we became when the Imperium fell. New images appeared. The Draconis in exile, crowded onto a single station. Their population had collapsed from billions to thousands. Katie watched them struggle to survive. Then she watched them begin to help others. A Draconis scientist sharing genetic research that cured a plague threatening the Vor species. Draconis engineers teaching other races how to build better, faster-than-light drives. Draconis healers working in refugee camps helping survivors of wars they had no part in. We spent 10,000 years learning, Frex said. Learning to be better. Learning that strength without compassion is just cruelty. Learning that power without purpose is meaningless. He turned to the tribunal. We cannot undo the past. Those worlds will not be unburned. Those lives will not be restored. But we have tried to earn the right to exist. We have given everything we have to help others, and now we ask for one thing in return. A place to survive. A sanctuary world where our species can continue. Grandfather Rock spoke then. His voice was like mountains grinding together, so slow and deep that Katie felt it in her bones rather than heard it. The question before this tribunal is not whether the Draconists deserve compassion. The question is whether Katie Morrison has the right to speak for an entire species based on one act of rescue. All eyes turned to Katie. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. Ember pressed closer, sharing his strength through their bond. Katie took a deep breath and stepped forward. I'm not special, she said. I'm not a warrior or a leader or a genius. I'm an engineer from a small mining colony. I fix drainage systems. That's my job. She put her hand on Ember's neck. But I saw someone drowning and I pulled them out. I didn't know he was a prince. I didn't know about the Imperium or the wars or any of this. I just saw a living being who needed help. Katie's voice grew stronger, and after I saved him, I got to know him. Not as Prince Ashkor, as Ember. As a child who was curious and playful and sometimes scared. Who liked to sleep on my pillow and eat my protein bars. Who looked at me with trust in his eyes. She looked up at the tribunal. You've shown me the worst of what the Draconis were. I've seen the horror they caused. But I've also seen what they are now. Frex could have taken Ember by force. He had the power. But he respected the imprint bond. He taught me their history, even the terrible parts. He gave me the choice. Katie gestured to Ember. And Ember could have left. The imprint bond doesn't force him to stay. It's a choice he makes every day. He chooses to stay with me because I showed him kindness when he was helpless. Because I protected him when he was vulnerable. The witness spoke for the first time. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, existing in dimensions Katie couldn't fully perceive. You claim that one act of compassion gives you the right to reshape galactic politics? No, Katie said. One act of compassion gave me a connection to Ember. It let me see him as more than just a symbol or a political tool. It let me see him as a person. She looked around the crystal chamber. Everyone here is focused on what the Draconis were or what they might become. But I'm focused on what they are right now, a dying species asking for a chance to survive. If we say no because of their past, we're saying that no one can ever change, that mistakes are forever, that redemption is impossible. Katie's voice cracked slightly. I saved Ember because he was drowning. I'm asking you to give the Draconis their sanctuary world for the same reason, because they're drowning too, and maybe, just maybe, saving them is the right thing to do. The tribunal was silent for a long time. Luminex's light flickered and pulsed. Grandfather Rock remained perfectly still, thinking thoughts that took minutes to form. The witness existed across multiple moments simultaneously, seeing past and future at once. Finally, Luminex spoke. We have reached a judgment, Katie's heart pounded. Ember made a small, anxious sound. Frex stood perfectly still, but Katie could see the tension in his posture. The Draconis will have their sanctuary world, Luminex said. The Treaty of Stars will be honored. Katie felt relief surge through her. Ember's joy flooded their bond, but Luminex wasn't finished. However, there is a condition. Katie Morrison, you must remain as regent, not for 5 years as Draconis law demands, but for 50, Katie stared. 50 years. She would be an old woman. Most of her life would be spent in this role. The witness spoke again. You will guide the heir. You will ensure the new Imperium does not repeat the mistakes of the old. You will be the bridge between the Draconis and the other species of the galaxy. This is our judgment, Frex turned to Katie. You do not have to accept. The tribunal has given us the world. We can find another way. Katie looked at Ember. He looked back at her with those golden eyes, the same eyes that had looked at her from toxic water all those months ago. Through their bond, she felt his plea. Not demanding, not commanding. Just asking. Stay, guide, together. Katie thought about her life on Epsilon 7. The small quarters. The drainage systems. The quiet, simple days. She could go back to that. Let someone else deal with galactic politics and ancient empires. Or she could stay. She could help guide a species towards something better. She could make sure that the horrors of the past didn't repeat. It wasn't really a choice. Not for her. She had pulled Ember from the water because she couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. This was the same thing. Just bigger. Okay, Katie said quietly. I'll do it. 50 years. We'll do it together. Ember made a sound of pure joy and wrapped his tail around her wrist like he had that first day. Brex bowed his head deeply. 20 years had passed since the tribunal's judgment. Katie Morrison stood on the balcony of the Great Hall on Nova Draconis, the sanctuary world that had been returned to the Draconis people. She was 45 years old now. Her hair showed streaks of silver. Lines had appeared at the corners of her eyes. But those eyes still held the same kindness that had moved her to pull a drowning creature from toxic water 2 decades ago. Nova Draconis was beautiful. The Draconis had transformed it from a barren rock into a thriving world. Cities of living crystal grew from the ground. Gardens filled with plants from 100 worlds bloomed in the valleys. And in the sky, dragons flew. Not just Ashkor, though he was the largest and most magnificent. The Draconis population had grown. Families had children again. The species was no longer dying. Katie watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Behind her, she heard the familiar sound of massive wings. Ashkor landed on the balcony with surprising grace for something 40 feet long from nose to tail. His scales gleamed like galaxies, shifting colors with his mood. But when he looked at Katie, his eyes were the same golden color they had been when he was small. Tired? Ashkor asked. His voice was deep now, but Katie still heard the chirp of the baby dragon in its tones. Exhausted, Katie admitted with a smile. But happy. Ashkor folded his wings carefully. Even after 20 years, he was always careful not to knock things over. 30 more years as regent.
Think you can handle me that long?
Katie laughed and patted his massive head. She had to reach up now. He was so much bigger. I handled you when you set my quarters on fire trying to sneeze. I think I can manage. They stood together in comfortable silence. It was a tradition they had developed over the years. Every evening when the day's work was done, they would find a quiet place and just exist together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. The bond between them had only grown stronger over time. Today was special, though. Ships were arriving from all over the galaxy, hundreds of them. It was the Festival of Stars, a celebration that happened once a year. Officially, it commemorated the tribunal's judgment. But everyone knew what it really celebrated. The day a human had pulled a baby dragon from toxic water and changed everything. The ambassadors are asking for you, Ashkor said. They want to present their gifts, Katie sighed. I never wanted gifts. I just wanted to help. I know, Ashkor said gently. But you did more than help. You showed the galaxy a different way to lead. The old Imperium ruled through fear. You've built something new, something based on cooperation and respect. Katie thought about the last 20 years. It hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, species who still feared the Draconis, political conflicts, near disasters. But slowly, carefully, they had built something new, the Harmony Accord they called it. A treaty system where species worked together as equals. The Draconis shared their genetic knowledge freely. They had helped cure diseases, improve agriculture, and solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. And Katie had been at the center of it all. Not because she was special, but because she refused to forget the lesson of that first day. When you see someone who needs help, you help them. It was that simple. Elder Vrex approached from inside the hall. He was ancient now, his scales dull with age, but his mind was still sharp. Katie Morrison, he said with deep respect. The ceremony is ready to begin. Katie nodded and followed him inside. Ashkor walked beside her, careful not to bump into the walls. The great hall was filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Katie saw familiar faces. Ambassador Seketh, who had once opposed her so fiercely but had become a cautious ally. Commander Lisa Grant, now an admiral representing Earth with pride. Thornak of the Kelvor, who had lived long enough to see the Draconis prove they had changed. The ceremony was shorter than Katie expected. Representatives came forward one by one and presented gifts. Artistic works, scientific discoveries, treaties of friendship. Katie accepted each one graciously, though she felt uncomfortable with all the attention. Then something unexpected happened. The lights in the hall dimmed. Vrex gestured toward the large windows that showed the night sky. "Look," he said simply. Katie moved to the windows and stared. The ships in orbit were moving. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species were reorienting themselves. They turned to face Nova Draconis directly. And then, one by one, their lights began to pulse in synchronized patterns. It was beautiful. Like a dance of stars. "What are they doing?" Katie asked quietly. Vrex came to stand beside her. "They bow. It is a tradition older than the Galactic Council, older than most civilizations. When a leader demonstrates wisdom and compassion worthy of respect, the ships of the galaxy bow. It has not happened in over 6,000 years. Katie felt tears prick her eyes. She watched as more and more ships joined the display. The entire orbital space became a symphony of light, all pulsing in honor of her. "I don't deserve this," Katie whispered. "I just saved a drowning kid." Ashkor lowered his great head beside her. His voice was gentle. "No, you saved hope. You showed the galaxy that compassion is stronger than fear. That kindness can change everything. That one person making the choice to help can reshape the future." Katie put her hand on Ashkor's scales. Through their bond, she felt his love and gratitude. Not just from him. Through him, she felt the emotions of every Draconis on Nova Draconis. Thousands of them. All grateful. All hopeful. All alive because she had made a choice 20 years ago. Vrex spoke again. "The old Imperium demanded the stars bow through conquest and terror. You made them bow through compassion and wisdom. That is why history will remember you, Katie Morrison, not as the human who saved a dragon, but as the one who taught the galaxy a better way forward." Katie watched the ships continue their dance of light. She thought about that day on Epsilon 7, the rain falling, the toxic water, the small creature struggling to stay afloat. She hadn't thought about consequences. She hadn't thought about politics or treaties or changing the galaxy. She had just seen someone who needed help, and maybe that was the point. Maybe the greatest changes came from the simplest choices, from seeing suffering and refusing to walk away, from offering kindness without expecting anything in return. Admiral Grant approached. She smiled warmly. "Earth is proud of you, Katie. You've done more for human reputation in the galaxy than 1,000 diplomats could have." "I didn't do it for reputation," Katie said. "I know," Lisa replied. "That's exactly why it worked." The ceremony ended. The representatives slowly departed, returning to their ships. Katie stood on the balcony again, watching the last of them go. Ashkor had curled up nearby, his massive form somehow still managing to look comfortable. Vrex sat in a chair designed for Draconis, his old bones grateful for the rest. 30 more years, Katie said softly. "Then what?" Ashkor opened one golden eye. "Then I complete the ascension ceremony and become the true leader of the Draconis. And you get to retire. Go back to Earth, maybe. Or wherever you want," Katie smiled. "I don't know if I remember how to be normal anymore." "You were never normal," Ashkor said with affection. "Normal people don't wade into toxic water to save unknown creatures. Normal people don't challenge entire galactic councils. Normal people don't reshape civilizations." "I just did what felt right," Katie said. "Exactly," Vrex said. "That is what made you exceptional. You did not calculate the political benefits. You did not consider the risk to yourself. You simply saw someone in need and helped. That purity of purpose is rarer than you think." Katie looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, on colonies and stations and worlds she had never visited, people were living better lives because of choices made here. Species that might have gone to war had found peace. Diseases had been cured. Knowledge had been shared. And it all traced back to one moment. One choice. One act of compassion in the rain. She thought about the next 30 years. There would be more challenges. More conflicts to resolve. More problems to solve. But she wouldn't face them alone. Ashkor would be with her. Vrex and the Draconis would support her. And the galaxy, however slowly, was learning to work together. "You know what's funny?" Katie said. "When I was young, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something important. I never imagined it would look like this." Ashkor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The universe has a sense of humor. You wanted to make a difference, so it gave you a drowning prince and told you to figure it out." Katie laughed too. "Yeah, that sounds about right." Vrex stood slowly. "I should rest. Old age is not kind to dragons." He bowed to Katie. "Thank you again, Regent, for everything." After Vrex left, Katie and Ashkor stayed on the balcony. The night deepened. Stars filled the sky, countless points of light representing countless worlds, each one with its own stories, its own struggles, its own small acts of kindness that kept the universe turning. Katie thought about all the people out there, the ones who pulled others from danger, the ones who offered food to the hungry, the ones who spoke up for those who couldn't speak for themselves, the ones who saw suffering and refused to look away. Maybe she wasn't that special after all. Maybe the galaxy was full of, "Thank you, Kay,"